I don't understand why this technique is not more popular, to be honest. And I don't understand why my teachers in university did not teach me, that that was the way to train. Why are people still resting 2 minutes between sets?
In this episode, you will hear my interview with Dr. Carl Juneau, who will tell you a lot of interesting stuff about the science of so-called effective reps and how you can get more out of your workout by concentrating it more to those reps of any given workout set that count, quote unquote, the most towards muscle growth, cutting out as much of the fluff work as possible and thus making your workouts a lot more time efficient. And if you're both passionate about building muscle and maximizing productivity in life outside of the gym, you will enjoy this episode. Before we get into this episode though, I just quickly want to tell you that some really exciting stuff are happening in sustainable self-development land as of recent times. And as of lately, the Sustainable Self-Development Group has been brought to life more than ever. We have over 1,000 awesome members and have daily discussions over some of the most interesting nutrition and training concepts. Also, the Norwegian mastermind himself, Børge Fagerli, has gotten on board not long ago, and he's spreading his knowledge there too. And as of late, we've been doing these really awesome Q&A sessions with Børge in the group where we answer some of the best nutrition and training questions that have come in the group. So if you have not done so already, then be sure to go to facebook.com/sustainable self-development and join the group. Also, you might want to know that Børge and I are currently working on a really epic training template, which will allow you to get, in our estimation, the best possible training stimulus without having to spend endless hours in the gym and pounding yourself with a bajillion sets every week and burning yourself out. And if this is something that sounds interesting to you, then head over to sustainableselfdevelopment.com and you can claim a 20% discount on this upcoming training template. All right, that's enough of the shameless plugging for now. And with that, let's get into the episode. All right, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Today, I'm really excited to talk with Dr. Carl Juneau. I hope I pronounced your name right, Carl.
Yes, it's right. Thank you, Abel.
Awesome. Yeah, so I'm really excited to talk about a topic that obviously is pretty near and dear to my heart. And I think a lot of people who are interested in making training an efficient and sustainable process for themselves will find these topics interesting. And we are going to talk about how you can make your training not just more effective, but also more time efficient and really make the best use of your time in the gym. So my first question to you, Carl, is, well, first of all, how are you? And secondly, I think I've seen a picture of you on Facebook, which is kind of a before-after photo, which was kind of you coming back to your best shape after some period of a layoff, or what's the story behind this pretty epic profile picture that you have on Facebook?
Thank you very much. First, thanks for having me on the podcast. It's a pleasure. And yeah, that picture, I resisted posting shirtless pictures of myself for a long time. Like I thought, I'm a professional, I'm a trainer, I have a degree, I don't need to show off,
Yeah.
And but I think that was just me being shy, about my body, even if I maybe don't have reasons to. But I was a little shy, and now I realize, people want to see that you can deliver the goods. And what you can see on that picture is me, really skinny. That's basically what I looked like in 2009. Starting in 2009, I got really sick. And I found out later that I had celiac disease or non-celiac gluten sensitivity. And that's a long story, but I ended up having to really change the way I was eating. And until I found that out, then I had a lot of trouble digesting foods and low energy, brain fog, even depression. And it took me about 2 years to find out find a solution. And when I finally found that solution, then I could start training again, gaining weight, and basically look like what I look like now in that photo again. So it was a pretty big transformation, a pretty big comeback, because it had taken me, I don't remember, maybe 10 years, to build all that muscle mass. And then I lost it in like 6 months by becoming sick. So I kind of made a comeback, and I was happy that I could use the knowledge and experience that I had before to put the muscle back on quickly. And also, I think muscle memory helped a lot, probably in that regard. So So it was a pretty good comeback, and I'm glad now that I'm back in good shape. And thank you for that comment on my picture.
Absolutely. So 2 quick questions off of that. First of all, just to give people some perspective, in a picture like that, like what's the weight difference on that approximately?
It's 27 pounds.
27. Yeah. So yeah, I posted a kind of a similar picture of myself not that long ago on Instagram, and I
saw it.
You did? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, and like yourself, I kind of posted that. Yeah, that's kind of a 10 or 10 plus kilo difference between 2 pictures, or like 20 or so pound difference. Right. And yeah, so just before people get too hung up over how like putting on 20 pounds or so of muscle during a bulking phase, it doesn't go that fast.
No, yeah, and people, I think, because of Photoshop and like the fake natural guys, who people maybe don't have really realistic expectations of what they can gain and what it looks like. So I'm not saying it was easy, especially gaining it the first time, but for a natural guy with average height and weight, you can put on, about 50 pounds in your lifting career. And like Lyle McDonald wrote a great article on that, and also recaps some what of the other guys in the industry thinks about that. And they more or less agree that you can put on about 50 pounds over the course of your lifting career. So that's, say, 5, 10 years, but it's doable. It takes time. And you can do it if you train the right way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a very good way to put it. And the other question I wanted to ask off of that is, you mentioned that you had this celiac disease sort of thing that you had to deal with. So how do you eat these days after figuring out what to actually do with your diet?
Okay, well, that's a great question. Never been asked that one. It's kind of personal, because I'm not saying that this is the way people should eat.
Sure.
And you'll also see that my cooking skills are like non-existent. But I'll tell you, but I'm not really recommending this to anyone. So I eat basically the same thing every day. I like consistency, and I'm a little bit of a boring OCD kind of guy. I like repetition, and I like my day to be consistent and to know what to expect. So in the morning, I will eat 4 eggs with butter and sweet potatoes, and those foods I can tolerate really well. And then I only eat for supper, which is like the last meal of the day. So I guess I'm doing some kind of intermittent fasting. I do it not to lose weight or to, be lean, because I'm already pretty lean, but I do it because it helps me focus. I find when I work, if I do not eat, I'm really focused, and I'm more productive, and that's important to me at this point in my life. When I was 20, I would eat 5 to 6 meals a day, and I was doing almost scared of not eating protein every 3 hours. At that time, that was the recommended way of putting on mass, and the way I eat now is probably not optimal for putting on mass. Happily, I've put on a sizable amount of mass already, and these days my focus is not so much on gaining more muscle. I've found I've gained a bit. I'm happy with the way I look, and I just want to be productive and help it work. So I skip lunch, and then I'll have supper, which is a steak or a fish with leafy green vegetables, and sometimes 1 cup of rice. And that's it. So that's a very boring diet. But I find it's pretty healthy, and keeps me lean, keeps me in shape, and keeps me focused.
No, yeah. I mean, for myself, I'm really not a foodie. So to me, it sounds like one hell of a way to eat. Like when people tell me these things, like, yeah, I don't like Diet Coke because the real thing tastes better. I'm like, what kind of sophisticated taste receptors these people have that they know the difference between Diet Coke and real Coke? Like, for me, I know sweet taste and savory, and that's the extent of my sophistication with taste.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess good for you and maybe good for us. It's maybe these people who crave a lot of foods and have a hard time stopping themselves, maybe they just have more active taste buds. They get more pleasure from eating or something, and it's maybe it helps us that we can live on a boring diet like this. One reason I don't have any, say, cookies or candies or chocolate at home is whenever I buy some and I bring some home, I eat them right away. So maybe that's one trick that people can get away from this is that the best way to avoid eating certain foods is just not to buy them and just not to have them at home.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and really, I think one of the key things to maintaining a lean physique year round is to just adapt a lower food reward type of diet. So it could be higher carb, lower carb, it doesn't really matter. But as long as the palatability and the energy density is managed, for the most part, you're basically on the road to success. So
yeah, great tip.
Yeah, awesome. So I'm wondering, what is your kind of training history? So I've heard you mention a couple of podcasts that you wanted to become an archer champion back in the days. And so what's your kind of history with that? And maybe also touch briefly on like what is your kind of history with bodybuilding type of training routines before you stumbled onto some of the things that you're doing now in the gym?
Sure. So as you say, I started out with archery. I was 6, and I saw Robin Hood with Kevin Costner, and I thought this guy was just great, and I wanted to be like him. So I enrolled in a class and started to learn to shoot arrows and do archery, so that was fun. And I became pretty good at it. When I was 17, I was a 3rd in Quebec, which is my state or province, as we call it here in Canada, and I was 7th in Canada. And I had begun lifting weights so I could pull heavier bows with more tension so that I could shoot arrows farther. And at 17, I got a new coach. That was the beginning of my undergraduate studies over here. We call it Cégep. And I had, taken fewer classes in undergrad because I wanted to train more, spend more time doing archery and maybe go to the Olympics. And this new coach sat down with me and he said, look, you're going to have to train full-time. You'll probably never win a gold medal or any medal at world class or Olympic level because no one in Canada ever won any, and we don't really have the structure in place to do well in that sport. I think the best position was 17. We never did better than that. So he told me, you won't win, and you'll spend maybe 10, 15 years doing that, and then you'll have no or low education, no career, and no fame. So is this really what you want to do? And no money, probably he mentioned that. And I said, I'll think about it. And about a week later, I said, I thought about it. Thank you very much. I'm done with archery. And thinking back, some people say that he was maybe harsh on me or, maybe he broke my dreams. But actually, I'm really grateful to him for telling me that and telling it the way it was because I was going, head first and not really thinking about the consequences of living as a amateur athlete. And I'm kind of glad I stopped. And at about the same time, I was already lifting weights. And I remember asking 2 trainers at the gym I was training at. We had free gyms for athletes. And I told them I wanted to build muscle mass. I was a very skinny kid. And as you know, you've seen on my picture on Facebook, this is basically what I look like when I don't train. And I asked them, I want to build muscle mass. So give me a program that does that. And it's the same goal, build muscle. And then one trainer gave me one program, and a few months later, another trainer gave me a pretty different program. And I was really surprised, really puzzled because I think, well, isn't there a science to this? It's the same goal. Why am I getting 2 different programs? And, this is basically what I did for the next 9 years. I studied exercise sciences, and then health and exercise statistics. And throughout my focus, one of my big focus and passion has been, what are the best ways to train? And what are some guidelines, techniques, and principles that we can apply to a workout plan that's going to work for most people under most circumstances and produce the best results. And I'm trying to, answer the question that I had, when I was 17, which is, I want to build muscle. What do I do? And I'm hoping that maybe at some point, good trainers will not give 2 programs that are very different, but they should give more or less the same program. And I think our field has made a lot of progress in these years. And I think that these days, if you're speaking to a good trainer, especially online, that you know who to listen to, who to follow, that you can, you'll find these good trainers following more or less the same guidelines across the world, which I think is really great. And this has been, my quest for the last, 15 years.
That's awesome. That's really great. And And so to slowly transition into kind of one of our main topics, I should say, for today, which is your effective reps or your work surrounding effective reps. So my first question about that is that obviously all of us are sort of in a seeking mode to find the best training routine or the best training split. Like, what is the most effective thing that we can do in the gym?
Yeah.
What I'd be wondering is that the effective reps concept, is that sort of a way to make an otherwise effective training program work in a more efficient way? Or is that sort of utilizing that sort of a training method, in your estimation, is the best way to design the most effective training program?
I think it's not a method in itself, like you would hear about maybe German volume training or 5x5 or whatever. These are, I think, maybe I will say programs that are pre-written and that you follow maybe more or less blindly, which can be a good thing or a bad thing depending on where you're coming from. But there's something to be said about, just finding a good program and doing it. If you don't know anything about lifting and you don't have a trainer and you just want to get started, then, the 5x5 program, is proven and has helped a lot of people build a lot of strength. So I won't speak against it. But my theory of effective reps is more on the other side, which was the first option you mentioned, which is a guiding principle, I think, or more of a guideline that a good trainer can keep in mind when creating a program to make the program more effective.
Yeah, awesome. And so maybe just to take a step back, since we mentioned that we are all in search for the best training program that's out there, in previous podcasts, I've heard you outline really, really nicely how you would guide a complete beginner through a general progression. Like, you would just start them with something really, really simple. But I would be curious that if we are talking about the sort of typical intermediate type of person who has been training for maybe 2 to 3 years and now is looking to put on that last maybe 15 pounds of muscle that they can still put on, is there sort of a general training program with certain parameters that you would kind of say to that person, this is something that you could do and you will be likely to make progress on that? And then maybe we can work from there and transition into the effective reps concept more.
Sure. What I follow and what I found to work the best in my career as a trainer is the approach recommended by Ripito and Baker in their great book, Practical Programming for Strength Training. Now, this book is so good, I got the second edition and the third edition. So when they released the new edition, I bought it just to get the updates that they put in. And in the second half of the book, they give a series of programs with a progression between them. And for the intermediate level, what they recommend, they start from a base of more or less 5x5. And, there are different ways to do 5x5, but let's jump right at the intermediate level and say you're coming off of a 5x5-ish type of program. And now the main difference that you're going to have to keep in mind at the intermediate level is that you need more time to recover. That's basically it. And for beginners, my go-to program for beginners is full body 3 times a week. And a beginner can recover in 2 days and make progress and keep getting stronger, workout to workout. For a long time. And actually, this is how Ripito and Baker define beginners. They say that a beginner is someone who makes progress every workout. So as long as you can make progress every workout, by all means do it. And I'll segue or I'll make a quick detour here because I think this is something that could be really useful for a lot of coaches and people in our field. What's a beginner? What's an intermediate level guy? How do we define that? With my PhD in health and exercise statistics, we've had whole courses just on what is a measure and on how do you measure things, how do you define things. And I think it's really important to know what we're talking about. So having this definition of a beginner as someone who is making progress every workout is really useful, I think. So I put my beginners on a 3 times a week full body program, and they can recover in 48 hours, and they repeat the workout, they get better. At some point, they will plateau in that program, and that just means that they need more recovery. So as a beginner, you get stronger, and then you lift heavier weights, and then this, taxes your system, and you need more time to recover. So at some point, you cannot train 3 times a week and still make progress with the same exercises. So at the intermediate level, what I recommend my clients do, and what Ripito and Baker recommend in their book, is just to have a light day. So the light day on a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday template is the Wednesday. On Monday, you do a high volume day. On Wednesday, you recover. And on Friday, you do a high intensity day where you try to increase your 5 RM. In this case, so your 5 rep max, your maximal strength, or just your best record. So on Monday, you don't really focus so much on setting a new record. You just want to get the volume in. That will be 5 sets, let's say, of squat at probably a 6 RM weight. And so you have 1 repetition in reserve for people who are familiar with that. So those are all submaximal sets because you're not really trying to set a new record. You're just getting the volume in. And as many of your listeners will know, volume is a great driver of muscle hypertrophy. Mm-hmm. On Wednesday, you're going to do just 2 sets of squats, and you're going to use a weight that's 80% of Monday. So let's say it was a 6 RM weight on Monday, then it's probably an 8 RM weight on Wednesday, and you're still doing 5 reps with a weight that you could do 8 times, so that's pretty easy. And you're just doing 2 sets, so that's pretty easy as well when you're used to 5 sets. So you're recovering, and you're just keeping the motor pattern fresh. That's the goal. And then you get to Friday. And Friday, you're going to do 5 reps at a 5 RM weight, or even maybe a 4 RM weight. That is, you're going to try and break your record. And this is how you make progress on the intermediate level program. That is, you're making progress from Friday to Friday. So that's once a week. Mm-hmm. On the beginner level program, you're making progress 3 times a week every time you work out. So you're making progress daily on the beginner level program. On the intermediate level program, you're making progress weekly. So it's once a week on Friday. And for having used that program for a long time, I can tell you that there's also a great psychological effect. That is, when you get to the gym on Friday, you know that you're there to beat your record, and you know that if you don't beat it, then you've wasted a week. And as a trainer, I know that if you don't beat it, it's not really wasted. Maybe you needed a week extra to adapt. Maybe you needed to recover more that week. All those things I know. But as a lifter myself, I want to get stronger and bigger, so I'm there on Friday under the bar, and I'm adding 5 extra pounds, and I'm like, I'm going to do this 5 times. There's no way I'm going to miss this lift. So it's good on the psychological side as well. And this is basically how I progress my clients through the intermediate level.
Awesome. No, that's wonderful. And thank you for going on that tangent for the benefit of the podcast. And I think it will be very, very useful for people to hear this, because when we will be now talking about some of these more kind of quote unquote special training methods, we can see how that compares to some of this more traditional way of progressing. So, yeah. So first, can you just define for us, what does the concept of effective reps mean to you?
Yeah, it came from a study I read that was published in 2017 by Prestige and al. And I'll get into the study in a minute. But that study led me to think about reps and if reps closer to failure were more effective. And I formalized a theory and kind of made the hypothesis that they would be. So a theory is just a set of interrelated propositions. We use a lot of that in health statistics and public health, not so much in exercise sciences, or at least we don't call them that. So I kind of made an effort to propose 3 propositions, and I find it's useful to just put them out there, 1, 2, 3. So then when we start arguing about the theory, then you can say, well, I agree with number 1, but I don't agree with number 2. So here they are. The first one is just defining failure. And most people will agree with this definition, I think. Failure is the point during a set when muscles can no longer produce necessary force to concentrically lift a given load. This is a definition given by Brad Schoenfeld in 2010. And some people would call this concentric failure. So that's what failure is, and I think it's useful to define it if we're going to talk about reps closer to failure. The second proposition is that effective reps are reps closer to failure. And the third proposition is that the closer a rep is to failure, the more effective it is at building muscle. For people interested, this was published first in February of this year, so that's 2018, in the Allen Aragon Research Review. They can read the whole thing. But in a nutshell, these are the three propositions.
Perfect. Yeah. So you mentioned that reps being taken closer to failure or more effective. Just briefly, how close to failure are we talking about? Is it all the way to failure, or 1 rep shy of failure, 2 reps shy of failure?
Yeah. So the theory, another good quality of a theory is just to be simple. So to keep it simple, I haven't mentioned this in the theory, so that's a great question that you have. And if we just follow the theory, then, the closer you get to failure, the more effective it is at building muscle, which means, going to failure and really reaching that point when you're trying to lift the barbell and, you cannot curl your bicep anymore, would be the most effective rep that you've done for your set. So according to the theory and what I was thinking at the time, I believe that this rep would be the most effective rep of your set.
Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. So you mentioned that there were a couple of studies that kind of tipped you off. Do you want to just briefly discuss these?
Yeah, absolutely. So first was the Prestige study that I mentioned. So they studied rest pause sets. And rest pause is a technique for doing your reps. Basically, what you're doing in a rest pause set is you're doing a series of reps that you carry out to failure. Then you're going to rest, short rest, and then you're going to do more reps to failure. And you can repeat that a few times. In that study, the subjects, they did an initial set, so a first set with 80% of 1 RM, so that's a more or less 8 RM weights. They did that to failure, and then they waited or rested 20 seconds, and then they did as many reps as they could. Then they waited 20 more seconds, and so on until they did a total of 18 repetitions. That was the rest pause group. In the study, they also had a normal sets group who did 6 reps at 80% with 2 or 3 minutes between sets. So this would be, your kind of classic 3 sets. Here it's 3 sets of 6, but we often see 3 sets of 10, 3 sets. That's really a staple in gyms. So 3 sets of 6 with 2 or 3 minutes in between. So the volume was the same in each group. The rest pause group, they did 18 reps with 20 seconds of rest when they reach failure in one set. In one long rest pause set. The other guys, they did 3 sets of 6. So that's also 18 reps. Yeah. And both group trained 6 weeks. And after 6 weeks, the guys in the rest pause group, they gained more muscle thickness in the thigh. Now, they gained 11%, whereas the other guys gained only 1%. And that difference was statistically significant. However, other differences between groups in muscle thickness in the arm and in the chest were not statistically different. So generally, when I talk about this study, I will say the results are similar and maybe a little bit better for rest pause. But at least what this study shows is that you can really cut your rest times and have similar results, which is great for doing efficient exercise and time-efficient exercise, as you mentioned at the beginning. I have another study that's interesting. If you want, I'll get into it now.
Yeah, sure, let's do it.
Okay, so this one is by Goto and al., published in 2005. And it's a very interesting protocol. It doesn't get talked about a lot, but I find it's really interesting. So in that study, they had 2 groups of lifters, and they did the exact same training protocol. That was 3 to 5 sets at 10 RM. And there was just one difference between groups. The lifters in group number 2, they rested for 30 seconds at the midpoint of each set. So they did 5 reps, 30 seconds rest, and 5 more reps. The other guys, they did their 10 reps in one shot, in one set. So the volume was equal between groups, but more effective reps were performed by lifters in group 1, the group that had no rest. Because if you think about it, group 2, by resting, they were not taking their sets to failure. They stayed far away from failure all the time. And as the theory would predict, lifters in group 1 gained more muscle cross-sectional area than lifters in group 2. The group 1 gained 12.9% and group 2 gained 4%, and the difference was statistically significant there as well. So this highlights the importance of a training variable that's not talked about a lot, which that Brad Schoenfeld calls intensity of effort. Intensity of effort is basically how close to failure you bring your set, and it relates, to the theory of effective reps, as in the closer a rep is to failure, the more effective it is at building muscle. Well, in this study, we saw that people who stayed away from failure by resting at the midpoint of their set, they built about 3 times less muscle.
That's very interesting. So first, let's talk about the effective reps concept. So traditionally, the way I've seen it being used is more in high rep work, where we are trying to make essentially lighter loads, making them harder. But it sounds like in this study, they were using pretty high intensities. So maybe first let's talk about this. Like, how do you personally like to use this best? Do you use it with all kinds of intensities across the board, or do you prefer to use it more with lighter load training? How do you personally like to do it?
Yeah. Okay. So to answer your question, I think I would have to talk about fiber recruitment. And fiber recruitment is important because to hypertrophy a muscle, to hypertrophy a muscle fiber, you have to recruit it. It has to be contracted. If it doesn't contract, and there's not much going on, it's not going to get much bigger. This is a more or less new avenue. I don't want to say new avenue of research because there's old research on that stuff, but let's say that we've begun to understand the significance and the importance of recruitment in a bigger way more recently, or at least I have. This is not the kind of stuff that was taught when I was doing my bachelor in 2004. Now, recruitment, you recruit 100% of the muscle fibers of your muscles when you use maximal or near maximal weights. You recruit them from the first rep. Depending, and I just saw some data recently that gives me an inkling that may be different from one muscle group to the other, but I think that up to around 20 reps, which is around 60% 1RM, and I may getting, my numbers a little fuzzy here, but I think that's in that ballpark, but don't quote me on this. Until that point, you're recruiting all your fibers from the first rep. So fatiguing your muscles and trying to do more effective reps may be, less important for heavier weights because, as you're saying, you're alluding to, that doing longer sets with lighter weights, well, you're not recruiting all your fibers, so you really want to fatigue your muscles. And then as you do that, more and more fibers get recruited, so more and more fibers can adapt and grow bigger and stronger. So, this is the general thinking at this time. I don't think I'm mistaken here. Does the theory of effective reps apply for heavy weights and sets of 5s or of 10? I think it still does, but I think it's less important than for sets of, let's say, more than 20 reps.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what is, or maybe I've heard you outline kind of your general way that you like to implement this training strategy of shortening your rest periods and cranking out more of these effective reps closer to failure. So maybe let's dive into those, and that will open up the avenue for some other potential questions from there.
Yeah, sure. So you want to know how I work out using this concept?
Yeah. Let's dive into it.
Yeah,
If you're up
okay.
for it.
I'll tell you in a minute, but before I forget, I just wanted to point out that, I mentioned two studies in favor of the theory, but some studies were against. And for the reader interested in seeing all the studies, I found 8, and 5 were in favor and 3 were against. And that can all be seen in the Alan Aragon article, in the original one where I published it. And also, just to be fair, and as a scientist, I want to kind of make these disclaimers that I haven't done a systematic review, so I may be forgetting some studies. And I'm not saying that this is the definitive answer on that topic, just my opinion at that point, and a theory and hypothesis I wanted to put forward.
Absolutely.
But I still train that way if you want, or I still apply this concept. And the way I train now is basically I just do one long ass rest pause set. I will say do a set of 10, go to failure, and I will wait 25 seconds. These days I use 25. I've used everything from 15 to 40. I've tested those and tested those with clients as well. These days I use 25 and wait 25 seconds. I will crank out a few more reps on a set of 10. I can usually crank out 3 more reps after a 25-second rest, and then I will rest 25 seconds and do 3 more reps and go merrily that way until my muscles really hurt, or I'm tired of doing it for the day, or more seriously of where I'm at in my mesocycle.
Right, absolutely. So I'm curious. So first of all, let's talk just for a second about rest periods. What you mentioned that you experimented with resting different time intervals. What were some of the things that led you to rest 25 as opposed to 4? I heard you in a previous podcast mention 40 seconds. So what did you find to be the difference there?
Okay, great question. So the Prestige study that I mentioned used 20-second rests. So, we have evidence that this rest period works well. At first, when I tried it, 20 seconds, and I was not used to rest pause sets, I couldn't crank out more reps. I would do, say, a set of 10, rest 20 seconds, and then I can do only 2 more reps. And then I have to wait another 20 seconds, and I do 2 more reps. And, it ends up being less efficient, and I end up doing a ton of what I call mini sets, So then I moved it up to 40 seconds. And 40 second would let me do 3 or 4 extra reps. So I thought, well, now it's worth it. And, on a bicep curl, it's not that much of a hassle, but on a squat, if you're gonna rack and unrack the bar for 2 reps, it's a lot of work, and I didn't think that was really effective or efficient. But as I adapted to the technique, after I would say 2 months, I found out that I was recovering faster, and so I started experimenting with shorter rest periods, and I found I could still do, enough reps that it would be worth my time and even be a little more efficient that way. And the one thing that I try to keep in mind all the time through this is it efficient? Because being effective is one thing, but being efficient is another. And as I hinted at the beginning, I'm at a point in my life where I want to be productive. And I think, you and I were really interested in building muscle and working out. We love that stuff. But a lot of business people and, dads and moms and even athletes, who want to play their sport and they don't want to spend 2 hours in the weight room or even an hour in the weight room. If you can get the same results in half the time, I'm all for that. So that's also a reason why I went from 40 seconds to 25. If I can shave off 15 seconds off of my rest and still make similar gains, I'll do it just because I'm saving time.
Yeah. So just as a side note, how long are your training sessions these days using these strategies?
These days I'm working out on a full body workout, but I split those into 2. So I'm only doing 4 exercises when I go to the gym, and with rest pause, my sessions are like 20, 25 minutes. And I'm pretty beat up when I leave the gym. And I'm making similar gains that I would make with around a 1 hour workout. And when I was training really seriously, I competed in powerlifting for 3 years over here in Quebec, and I'm not really built for strength, so unfortunately I never went really far, but I did train pretty seriously, and I would do these long workouts where you rest 3, 4, 5 minutes between sets, and I would bring a book, to the gym, and I would be sitting down a lot of the time and reading, and I would leave the gym, beat up, but it took 2 hours. Whereas now I can leave the gym beat up after 25 minutes and feel pretty confident that I had a good workout.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. So 2 things you mentioned there. One is re-recking and wrecking the weight with a squat, which brings up the topic of exercise selection. And the other one was, of course, progression, and that you're still making gains, which brings up the topic of progressive overload. So maybe let's knock out the exercise selection question, because that's a simpler one to address. So obviously these short rest periods may not lend themselves that well to some exercises, or at least they might be better suited for some exercises than others. So are there no-go lifts in your experience with this one?
Oh, yeah. Any lift that's very technical. So no clean and jerk, no snatch. And yeah, well, you're laughing, but I remember a few years ago, I used to actually go out with I was dating a CrossFit athlete, pretty highly ranked over here in Quebec. And she would get injured all the time, and it was really sad. And in CrossFit, a lot of people were doing snatches to failure. And, I'm laughing, but I guess I should not. And I think that's very unsafe, very risky. And don't do it. Don't do it, guys. So don't do response sets with snatches, and don't do it with clean and jerks. Next up in the technical hierarchy of exercises, I would rank the squat, and close to that, the deadlift. And I personally use the technique for squats and deadlifts, but I've been working out for around 17 years. And so I would say that my technique is very dialed in. And so I'm not afraid to make a technical mistake. I'm squatting in a rack with safety pins. And, I take all the precautions that you need to take if you're going to go to failure on the squat. If you're a beginner or even intermediate, if your technique is not really good, then you may not want to fail on these exercises, because you might get injured. And then down the hierarchy are the single joints exercises like leg extensions, leg curls, biceps curls, triceps extensions, and a lot of the machine exercises. I don't want to say all of them, because there are some wonky machines out there, but many machine exercises are pretty safe to do to failure. And for those, then maybe they would be the most indicated for using this method.
Yeah, that brings up, just for 1 second, still the question of how we define failure. You gave a really nice definition for it in the beginning, but still, like, some people will wonder, do we mean by failure the point where we're still attempting one more rep with, like veins popping out of our forehead, and we fail the rep, or the point where we feel like, okay, the next one would definitely not go with good form?
Yeah, for practical reasons, I would say don't actually fail, especially, if you're squatting, then you need to leave the bar at the bottom, and it's a lot of hassle. I think that in theory, that last rep that you failed, you did the eccentric portion on the squat at least, and that rep, was probably very effective, but it's going to cost you some time and some hassles, so you can skip it. And the difference in effectiveness is I think small, and I was pretty excited about this when I published a theory in February, but since then I've had some conversations with good coaches, and I'll mention a few in passing, but I'm forgetting many. But I spoke with, or on Facebook actually chatted with, James Krieger, Greg Knuckles, Adele Moussa, and Brendan Roberts, and they critiqued some of the studies that I was basing my theory on, or citing in favor of the theory, and made me more aware of their limitations. So while I still think that reps closer to failure are more effective, I would say that the difference is probably small. So for a small difference, you certainly do not want to risk injuring yourself, and you might also keep your lifting fun and easy, and not leave the bar at the bottom of the squat, and finish your reps. So to answer your question, I would say that maybe, generally speaking, maybe you can skip the last rep. If you know you're going to fail, don't be a masochist, and then don't do it.
Perfect. Yeah. So with that, let's talk about progressive overload a little bit. So how do you like to progress with? So you're doing this giant S, basically, rest pause set.
Yeah.
So once you completed it, the next workout, are you attempting to increase the weight or try to do more of these effective reps in subsequent sets after the short rest period? Like, what is your go-to method there?
Yes. Well, so that's maybe two questions in one. There's progression in terms of load, and there's progression in terms of volume, or number of reps. To progress reps with rest pause is really easy. You just do maybe an extra mini set at the end. You will do one more rest pause. So let's say today I do one set of 10, and then I rest 25 seconds. I do 3 reps, and I repeat that 3 times for a total of 9 extra reps. Well, maybe the next week I will do the same workout, and I will do 10 reps again, and I will do 4 times 3 extra reps. So, I've increased my volume by 3 reps, which is a worthy increase in 1 week. So that's a good way to increase volume, and it's a very efficient way to increase volume. The quote-unquote old way to increase volume is to do an extra set. Well, if you're going to do an extra set, it means you're going to wait, 2 minutes, 3 minutes if you want to recover well and don't drop your weight too much. So you're going to be spending more time in the gym to increase your volume. And if you're going to add one set to 6 different exercises and you wait, let's just say 2 minutes more for each, then you've added 12 minutes just of resting to your session. Yeah. Whereas with rest pause, and then you rest just 25 seconds, and you can progress, without spending that much time inside the gym. So that's progression for volume, but there's also progression for intensity or weight or load, the load that you lift. And if I did 10 reps last week, and now I want to do 10 reps again with a higher load, I may not be able to do it. To be honest, at my level, I'm not going to make gains every week. Beginners are going to make gains every workout. Intermediate lifters will make gains once a week. But for me now, I'm probably going to use the same weights, and I'm just going to try and squeeze out an extra rest pause at the end, 3 more reps, and I'm going to be happy with my progress that week.
Yeah. Well, did you still find that over multiple weeks you were able to add load to your lifts?
For me, these days, it's going up and down. I'm finding that, yes, I'm getting stronger, but then I need a deload. So I deload the weight, and the way I do it is I take 10% off my 1 RM. And then, I bring it back up, and it goes slowly back up, and then I need another deload, so it goes back down. Since, say, the last 2 years, there's like a confounding factor here is that, I've been more focused on business and less focused on training. I would say that I was the strongest a few years ago when I was competing in powerlifting. But now I train less often. I do lower volumes. So I can't say honestly that I'm really getting stronger that way, but I wouldn't say it's because of the technique. I would just say that it's because I've been lifting for 17 years. I'm pretty strong already. I'm lifting less than I used to, and it's not my main focus anymore. So talking just about myself, I'm afraid I can't say that I am getting stronger. What I can say is that for some of my clients who are using this technique, yes, they do get stronger. Now, obviously, I'm not doing a clinical trial here, and you can't compare yourself using one technique and the other at the same time. You're just using one technique or another technique. And these clients, I'm sure they would get stronger as well if they were training with another type of workout plan.
Sure.
Which one works the best to build strength? Some plans, are made for strength, and I keep getting back to the 5x5. Well, you're doing sets with few reps, heavy weights, long rest periods. That's, the traditional formula for building strength, and it still works. So if your goal is to build strength, then maybe, doing a long rest pause set is not the best way to progress. But if your goal is to build muscle or get in shape, or just transform your body and look good in a way that's efficient, then this is definitely the technique that I would recommend.
Awesome. And so if someone wants to do this and they want to put together a workout plan, and let's say they want to use only this type of training method for all of their lifts and all of their muscle groups, how would you sort of, as a sample, like how many sets would you do per muscle group per week with this kind of training setup?
Well, counting sets, becomes maybe a little bit problematic because you're just doing one rest pause set. But if you let's say you're a early intermediate, complete beginners, they can do basically anything and get good gains. But let's say you've been working out for some time, but you're not in great shape. You're going to start out with one rest pause set for all your major muscle groups, and you're just going to keep adding pauses. And 2 months down the line, maybe 3 months, you're on your set of, let's say, 10 reps. Well, you're doing 15 or even 20 extra reps just with the rest pause technique. So to answer your question, it's still just one set, but you're doing more and more reps. And I could give you guidelines for how many extra reps to do on week 1, on week 2, on week 3. Okay, let's do it. So week 1, you're going to do 1 rest pause. Week 2, you're going to do 2 rest pauses. Week 3, you're going to do 3. Maybe week 4, you're going to do 3 again because it's starting to be hard. And then the week 4, you're going to do, I think we're on week 5 now. So week 5, you're going to do 4. And week 6, you're going to do 4 as well. So you're kind of seeing that I'm adding 1 rest pause per week. And then as you get to week 3, 4, 5, 6, then it's 1 per every 2 weeks. That's a general guideline for progression. But it's going to depend on how you feel, and when you get into the gym or when you get out of the gym, if you feel that you could have done more, or if you're doing your set and, you feel you have more in you, then do it, and it's there's a good variability there. Some people can handle more aggressive progressions, others can't. So this is why I was a little hesitant to, give you a template progression for rest pause, partly because it's individual, and also partly because, to be honest, I don't have as much experience with this technique as I do with, more traditional lifting methods.
Sure. And have you experimented with repeating the same sort of rest pause set multiple times a week for the same muscle group?
Oh yeah, sure. For me, I do them 2 times a week, and it's working pretty well. For beginners, I have them doing three times a week, and it's also working well. The one, I guess, objection that some coaches will have against doing rest pause is that they're afraid to train to failure all the time. And I agree that this can be a problem. Now, I have 2 answers to that. The first one is you do not have to do your rest pauses to failure. Now, I'm kind of uncoupling the theory of effective reps and rest pause here, but one is a theory and the other is just a technique. Picture a rest pause set where I'll stay with my example of 10 reps, but let's say that 1 week I feel really beat up and my joints hurt, and maybe I'll skip a workout, and then the next workout I will take my 10 RM weight that I'm used to doing 10 times, and I will do just 9. And then I will wait 25 seconds, and instead of doing 3 reps, I will do just 2 reps. So these sets and mini sets are carried out 1 rep shy of failure. They are less effective, but they let me recover, and they're still very efficient. So you can use rest pause sets and save a lot of workout time, even to recover, and even if you're not training to failure. So I hope people take away that you don't have, they don't confound the two, that you don't have to train to failure with rest pause set from this podcast.
Awesome. Do you think that someone can just progress with this training method all the way up to their genetic potential?
Yeah, I think so. I may get some, some flack for this. I'm curious to see how people will react, but I don't understand why. And by the way, there was a second way to avoid training to failure. But I'll just finish my thought. I don't understand why this technique is not more popular, to be honest. And I wrote a big guide recently, hoping to get more people to use it. And I don't understand why my teachers in university did not teach me, that that was the way to train. Why are people still resting 2 minutes between sets? And on Danny Lennon's podcast, I mentioned for the first time that I thought there was a U-shaped relationship between rest and hypertrophy. Whereas if you rest less than 1 minute, for example, 20 seconds in the Prestige study, you end up building more muscle than when you rest 2 to 3 minutes. And so the Prestige study, like I said, they had more hypertrophy in the thigh. This study has some limitations, but let's pretend for a moment that it's true. Okay, let's pretend that 20 seconds is better than 2 minutes. Well, why did my teachers teach me that a workout program was 3 sets of 10 with 2 minutes in between? That's looking at it from the recent data. It makes it look kind of dumb. You're just wasting your time. Now, since then, I've had conversations with some good coaches. I mentioned them earlier, and they helped me realize that some of these studies had limitations. So what I think now is more of a hockey stick relationship between rest and hypertrophy, whereas 0 minutes of rest is probably just as effective as 1 minute. And I'm pretty sure that Greg Nuckols agreed with me on this, and I hope I'm not misquoting him. Maybe he can correct me, but looking at the evidence, he pretty much agreed. And some other coaches agreed as well. It was a public discussion on Facebook. I can send you the link. It became like an epic long post and discussion. If you want to put it in the show notes, Abel, or you can read it yourself.
Curious,
Yeah. No, I mean, there was some very interesting and high-level conversation going on there. And in summary, if resting 20 seconds is just as effective as resting 1 or 2 minutes, then why do people rest for 2 minutes? So for hypertrophy, at least, I think we have some evidence that it's not necessary, and basically it's a waste of time. So I hope more people start resting less. And thanks for giving me the opportunity, to talk about this training method on your podcast. I do want to say that, this is not confirmed at this point. This is my, opinion based on my experience and my analysis of the science. I look forward to see more coaches and maybe more exercise scientists come forward and ask the same questions and maybe give their opinion as well. But perhaps, in 10 years, in 5 years, the standard way of working out for muscle mass will be very short rests, because, as we're seeing, there's I think, more and more data, or at least reasons to believe that these 2 minutes rest are just a waste of time.
Yeah.
So to answer your question, yes, I can see people using rest pause from the beginner stage to the advanced stage and build all the muscle mass they need using this technique. Yes, I see it.
No, perfect. Yeah, and I to your question as to why is this not more popular, I think that a lot of people are just scared to abandon kind of long, true and tried methods.
Oh yeah.
But I guess the main message is that until you're actually trying something, then you will never know whether it could actually work. So someone needs,
Yeah, just try it out. Try it out for like 4 weeks, and you'll see for yourself.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah. So finally, maybe let's touch on your app that you touched on in the beginning, or I don't know if you just mentioned it to me offline, but you have a really cool innovation which could revolutionize the future of training design. So let's talk about it.
Well, thanks for this. Well, I hope it does. I've been a lifter and a trainer for 17 years, and I wrote a lot of workout plans. And one thing that that kind of made me sad was that I had to start over again every time. You get a new client, you write a new workout plan, and then your client does it, and then you get another client and you write another workout plan. So I kind of grew tired of writing new workout plans all the time, and also it's expensive for people. You know, they need to get a trainer, and they got to pay this trainer for his time, and then they get a plan, but maybe 8 weeks later they have to get a new plan. It's pretty expensive. So I was also pretty sad to see that a lot of people in the gym, you know, doing stupid stuff, and it hurt, you know, it hurt inside to look at them and think, well, this person is wasting his time, you know, and I would just see them from the corner of my eye and not just, you know, spend, you know, an hour staring, but I could see that month after month, they wouldn't be really improving. And, you know, they would still rack that one plate on the barbell and do the same bench press for like a year. And you're like, well, buddy, you know, you're not going anywhere with this.
Yeah.
So I hope that more people can have access to high quality programs. And this is what led me to build an AI, to build an app that applies rest, pause, and other advanced methods to build muscle. And so since getting my PhD, and it's been about 2 years, we've been working on this. I'm with a small team, and we're building a new phone app that helps you build muscle faster with a smart program. So your program starts at your level, and it levels up automatically with you as you work out. So it tells you what to do, and then you just enter what you actually did, and then it adjusts every workout, and it updates every time you work out with the best reps and sets and weights. So you always build muscle as fast as possible. It's really telling you what to do and applying these principles so you don't have to get a trainer. And to be honest, these days, Abel, when my friends or, you know, people around me, they ask me for a program, I just give them the app because I you know, it almost does a better job than I can do, and it does it instantly because it's a program. So it's like a personal trainer in your pocket. It's 10 times cheaper than a human trainer. It's available 24/7, and it's always up to date. I keep it up to date with the latest science, and this is really my number one passion. So you don't have to do it, you know, as a trainer or as a lifter. You don't have to keep up with the latest news because I do it, and I update the program inside the app. And what I'd like to do, Abel, is offer your listeners their first month free if they'd like to check it out. So, dear listener, if you want to build muscle faster and get your first month free, then use this special link. The link is drmuscleapp.com/Abel. So you can get your first month free. So that's drmuscleapp.com/ABEL. drmuscleapp.com/Abel.
Damn. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Juneau, for giving this offer for the listeners. And me as a podcast host, these are the moments when you know you made it. Someone just made a custom URL with your name.
With your name. Yeah. Well, you know, I'm happy, and I'm also happy that, you know, you reached out and that I'm given this opportunity to talk about my number one passion. To me, you know, this work feels like play, and I hope I can contribute to this field by helping more people train in a better way, in a more efficient way, be it by using Respause like we've discussed, or even with my app. You know, if people who cannot afford a trainer end up working out better and getting better results and transforming their body, you know, I've seen firsthand how it can transform your life. I can recount a quick anecdote. You know, I had this client who came to me obese, and she complained that the parking was too far away from the gym. And over the course of 6 months, she lost 48 pounds, and she started biking to go to the gym. And at the same time, she left her job where she was didn't get any recognition. She left her abusive husband, and she stopped drinking heavily. You know, and maybe you've seen this as well as a trainer, but when people lose control and they finally decide to, you know, get back in shape and gain back control, they make big changes in their life. And this is what I hope people can do with these techniques is, get into shape and get into the best shape of their life, and, be really proud when they look at themselves and feel good. And so I'm really glad you gave me the opportunity to be here today.
No, absolutely. And thanks for those closing words. And it was an honor talking to you. Just any other resources you would like people to check out?
No, really. If they get the app, they're also going to get a few emails with tips and my views on training and building muscles. So the best way to get all of that would be just to follow that link, drmuscleapp.com/Abel. And this is how they kind of get into my world.
Wonderful. Well, Dr. Juneau, thank you so much for being on. It was an absolute pleasure.
Me as well. It's been a pleasure.
All right, guys, hope you enjoyed this episode. And once again, if you haven't checked it out already, be sure to visit the Sustainable Self-Development Facebook group at facebook.com/Sustainable Self-Development. And if you haven't done it already, visit sustainableselfdevelopment.com to be up to date with everything that we've got going on there. All right, thank you for hanging on up until now, and see you in the next episode.